Hey guys, hope you are good. So what we're going to do today then is coach you through basically cardio training. It's something which you get a lot of questions about quite a lot of the time in terms of what are the best types of cardio training to do to get a particular result. You know, people not sure whether they should be doing some high intensity stuff or whether they should be doing some lower intensity steady state exercise, or whether they should be training 3 days a week on cardio or 4 days a week on cardio, or if they can do it every single day. Or there's always just a lot of questions just surrounding it. So I figured what we do today in the webinar is actually kind of give you a bit more of an insight into cardio training as a whole, and actually help you to kind of decide what would be a better form of cardio training for you to do yourself to get the results you want based on who you are, where you are, and the types of results that you actually want to get from it as well, and how you want your body to perform as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my screen up for you guys so you can see just the little coaching presentation that we've got for you. It's not a massively long one, load of content in there, but we're going to be going through some of the stuff in a little bit more detail as we kind of run through. So let's get this going for you guys. Right. Okay, cool. So hopefully you guys should be able to see my screen right now. So as I said, what we're going to do is run through the cardio presentation for you guys. And yeah, I said, hopefully this should be pretty valuable coaching for you, which should help you up quite a bit. So let's have a look. All right, cool. So let's crack on. So which type of cardio should you be doing for you? And as I said, there's no one size fit all approach with this. It's the same as everything in nutrition and in training. There's no one thing that works perfectly for one person is necessarily going to work perfectly for the next person, even if the next person is their brother, for instance, or their sister. All right, so it's important to note that. So look, what we're chatting about today is what exactly steady state cardio is. Okay, I'm going to talk about what the high intensity interval training is. Talk about the pros and cons of each, because there are, both have actually got positives and negatives. There's a couple of myths that I just want to kind of go through, what kind of fact and fiction things, and then talk a little bit more about what actually you should be doing in terms of your own cardio training to get the results that you're after. We've got a couple of questions which we've already had in from people via messages, which we'll go through towards the end of the coaching as well. All right, cool. So what is steady state cardio? So steady state is pretty much steady paced effort. All right, typically working between about 65 to 80% of your maximum heart rate or thereabouts. All right, cardiovascular wise could be running, walking, cycling, swimming. Could be, on a cross trainer, could be rowing, stepping, any of those things. So any of those actual, exercises which are based around the cardiovascular type of training. So that's the stuff we're looking at predominantly there. And as I said, maintaining a relatively steady pace and rate of exertion the majority of the time as well. So when you're doing the steady state stuff, you should be able to, maintain a conversation without being horrendously out of breath. And yeah, that's pretty much the level which we're looking at. This is what most people would tend to do when they go to the gym a lot of the time. It's what most people would do when they go out and decide to start cycling or decide to start doing some running, for instance. Most of the time it's in and around this. Okay, so on the flip side of that, what's HIIT training? So HIIT training, high intensity interval training. Okay, and what we do with this type of training, we actually utilize maximal or near maximal efforts followed by rest and recovery periods. Okay, so this is it's structured periods of work and rest. Now there's interval training, normal interval training which you can do, and in an interval workout you could do efforts which are around 60, 70, 80%, whatever, which is interval training, but it's not the high intensity stuff. So obviously we're looking specifically at high intensity, which is, as I said, using maximal or near maximal, and can take you up 90, 95% plus in terms of your maximum heart rate reached during the effort. So it's pretty hard stuff. You'll typically find you'll have a reasonable amount of rest in between efforts here. An example of a high intensity workout, which we get people doing sometimes, is where we do a bit of a warm up and then they'll do 4 efforts of 20 seconds maximal with 40 seconds recovery. So we've got like a 2-to-1 ratio there in terms of rest to work. Okay, so we've got a reasonable amount of rest periods in there. All right. And what we typically do that workout, by the way, they'll do 4 rounds of that, and then they'll have a couple of minutes easy. Then they'll do another 4 rounds, another couple of minutes easy, and then another 4 rounds. And the idea is that the maximal effort stays at a pretty constant in terms of the output. Okay, that's what we kind of look forward in that session. So we don't don't want people to die off towards the end of the session. We want to, as I said, have enough rest to maintain the quality in that, as well as getting the volume in with that work as well. So that's the high intensity stuff. So, they've both got the pros and they've both got the cons. Steady state cardio, it does get a bit of a bad rep nowadays. I'll hold my hands up and say that I've kind of slated steady state cardio, absolutely. But I've also, I'm also a big lover of it myself. Most of the training, a lot of the training which I've obviously done for triathlons and Ironmans, a lot of that has been steady pace stuff, although I do a lot of efforts in as well. But a lot of that has been kind of steady state cardio, and it's good for fitness and everything. But as I said, it's got its pros and its cons. In terms of pros, so the good stuff in terms of steady state cardio. So here we're talking about going out for a run for half an hour, 45 minutes, or getting on your bike for a bit of time, or doing a cross trainer. All those sorts of things. So it's lower intensity, which means that you're pretty much going to be able to do it if you can move, okay, which is a good starting point. There's a low impact on your central nervous system, so it's not gonna be too demanding in terms of your nervous system, basically, which means you can do it more frequently than something which is going to have a bigger impact on that. Okay, in terms of social element, it's quite good because if you want to go out jogging with your friend, then that's great. You go out, do a half-hour run, 45 minutes, an hour, out running with your friend, absolutely great. And I said that's pretty cool. So from a social perspective, it's quite good. The word liberating might be a bit strong, but quite a lot of people like it. It's one of certainly personally, it's one of the things that I find is best to clear my head a lot of the time. If I go out and I just get and bang and run out for an hour or so. Next thing down there is kind of linked in with all the stuff we spoke about already. So it's great for beginners. So if you're someone who's just starting out, we wouldn't want to start you doing cardio training, doing some real hard interval stuff, because it's just going to mess you up. What we would do, however, is get you out there doing 30, 45 minutes of actual steady state cardio a couple of times a week, 3-4 times a week, whatever it needs, basically. Okay, so in terms of beginners, it's really good. It's doesn't take a great deal of don't need a great deal of ability to be able to go on a cross trainer or to walk or to even jog. You don't really need a massive amount of ability to actually perform the task. Obviously, when you start out, you might feel unfit, but that will come. You can do it when you're injured, so within reason, that is. So if someone's got an ankle injury, there's often no reason why they can't go and swim and do steady cardio that way. If someone's got a shoulder injury, then excuse me, if someone's got a shoulder injury, there's typically no reason they can't get out there and run, or they can't go on a stepper or something like that. So you can usually train around an injury, or most of the time anyway. So it's pretty good that you can actually kind of crack on and still do some training, even if you maybe got a joint which isn't doing its job correctly and is hurting. It's good for active recovery. So if you've had a hard workout, for instance, it's actually good to the next day to go out and actually do a little bit of steady state cardio. One of the things that's actually good for is, kind of basically open up the blood vessels and helping your body to flush out all the crap which is kind of congregated, so to speak, from the training the day before, the higher effort session the day before. So actually opening up the blood vessels and flushing the blood through that little bit better is actually pretty good to help with the removal of waste products, and just to help flush fresh blood in there and help you just to recover that a little bit quicker. There's a higher fat oxidation. Basically, you'll burn more fat when you're doing steady state cardio than you will do when you're doing high intensity interval training. Okay, you're not going to burn a great deal of fat or any when you're doing high intensity interval training. If you are, then you're not doing it hard enough, because you should be using a different energy system, basically. Okay, so when you talk about you see treadmill and stuff, talking about your fat burning zone, when you're working about 65% or so, then at that effort level of that that 65% of your heart rate, for instance, you're going to be burning more fat than you would do if you were doing a high intensity interval session where you're doing like an all out burst for 15-20 seconds or so. Okay, so in terms of the actual number of calories you'll burn doing a 45-minute run, for instance, compared to doing a 45-minute interval session, potentially could be more, depending on the work rest ratio of the interval session. Typically, someone might do, people will do the interval sessions because they want those to be shorter. So it might be that you'd actually end up comparing like a 45-minute run to like a 25 or a 30-minute like higher intensity session, for instance. And the caloric burn during the steady state cardio is typically a lot of the time going to be higher actually during the session than that of the higher intensity session, believe it or not. We'll come into that in a minute. Now, the cons in terms of steady state cardio, so it's not, it's not amazing all the time. Like with any type of training, it's got negatives. Now, in terms of the cons, as I see them, it's not going to have a big bang for buck. Okay, so there's not a massive impact on your metabolism. So basically, if your heart rate and your metabolic rate gets elevated for half hour, 45 minutes, when you're actually doing this form of cardio, your metabolism is going to go pretty much straight back down to where it was as soon as the exercise finishes, or certainly shortly after that. So basically means that when the exercise stops, so does that increased fat oxidation. Okay, so you're actually going to stop burning fat, stop burning as much fat when the actual exercise stops there. Okay, your body's also super adaptable. Now, what I mean with that is you'll end up having to do more of this type of cardio to get the same sort of result, or to get any result. Now, prime example of that, if I was to run 4 miles in 30 minutes, 5 days a week for 4 weeks, my body's going to burn, my body's going to burn X amount of calories the first time I do it. But then if I keep doing that, by the time my month's up and I've been doing that, 4 or 5 times a week, whatever I'm doing at the same pace, my body's got a lot more efficient at actually doing it, which means it's actually burning less energy. So if I was burning 300 calories to start off with, now maybe it's burning 200 or 250 calories, because my body's been, I said, it's adapted to it. It's got more efficient at doing the exercise. So then what I have to do is actually increase the volume or the intensity. Typically, what a lot of time people just increase the volume, because increasing the intensity is more painful. Okay, so your body adapts to it. It can be boring, so a lot of people don't like going running, don't like going cycling, don't like going swimming because it bores them. So there's there's that. If it's something that's going to bore you, then maybe it's not the greatest thing to do, because you might most likely just end up giving up on it. Could potentially increase your risk of injury. I mean, you're going to get that with anything, to be honest. Any type of training, and increased risk of injury, because there's more chance of getting injured going out running than there is, sitting your ass watching Coronation Street, to be fair. The more the increase of risk of injury would come with the steady state stuff, is because typically people potentially end up doing too much. So, if someone's going to the gym for a couple of hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week, potentially is going to end up doing too much. If someone's out running, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a week, again, potentially they're going to end up doing too much and bump up that risk of injury there. Time consuming, as I said, your body adapts to it, so you actually end up typically increasing the amount of time that you actually exercise for. So potentially for someone who is who's not got masses of time, it's not going to give you the biggest bang for buck. And there's a potential for increasing your cortisol levels, so your stress hormone levels as well, which is one of the negatives which gets talked about with steady state cardio quite often. That's typically going to be if someone's doing too much of it. Okay, there's a potential for that as well. But we'll have a look at the high intensity stuff now as well. So HIIT training. So again, that could be an example of that workout, like I said, which is, we'll do a warm up and then we'll do 20 seconds hard as you can, 40 seconds easy, 4 times through, couple of minutes easy, then repeat that 3 or 4 times. So that's the HIIT training. It's time efficient, okay? In a 20, 25 minute high intensity interval session, you can have a massive impact on your metabolism. Okay, much more impact on your metabolism than you would do on, by doing a 45-minute steady state. Because as I said, when you do a steady pace cardio workout, the metabolism is going to get back down to where it was pretty soon after you finish. On a high intensity session, it's going to be elevated for up to about 24 plus hours after you finish. Basically, what you do, you create a big metabolic effect in your body, and your body basically, it likes homeostasis. It likes to be at its resting state. By doing the real hard, high intensity session, you take your body well out of its resting state. Okay, much more so than you would do on a steady state cardio exercise. Okay, or in a session. So what your body's then trying to do after you finish the workout is actually bring itself back down to its normal resting state. So it's working its arse off, by burning loads more energy, loads more calories. It's actually doing that to help get itself back down to normal. Okay, so that's what we're on about with an increase in metabolism, because where your body's trying to bring itself back down to normal after you finished, which means that metabolic rate's going to be up, which means you'll be burning more calories. So that's where we talk about the biggest bang for buck comes with the high intensity session, because you're going to keep burning calories for a lot longer after you finish the session. So that's what we call the afterburn. It's good in so much as you can do it at home. So, you don't have to go out running, for instance. You don't have to go out cycling. The high intensity sessions you can do at home. You can incorporate exercises like, sprints on the spot, or stepping, or doing things like burpees and squat thrusts and runners and stuff like that. So you can get the similar kind of effect of actually going out running or rowing or something like that. You can actually do that via from the comfort of your own home as well. It's great for sports. So any sports which is like explosive, it's really good for in particular. So if someone does like for example, what we've got people do. So we've got people who do like netball, for instance. We've got some people who play hockey. We've got some people who will play football, rugby. So it's actually really good for explosive sports. Okay, if someone's a rugby player, we wouldn't typically get them doing like steady state cardio for 45 minutes twice a week. It's not going to have any bearing on their sport whatsoever, typically, unless they're running the line, for instance. Increase your glucose metabolism as well. So you're basically going to mobilize blood sugar level, mobilize sugars, which means your body's actually going to burn through those through the sugars which are stored in your body, through the stored carbohydrates. Okay, so that's going to be happening. So you're actually going to be burning those. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the high intensity sessions, not burning loads of fat. It's because your fuel source, your primary fuel source, when you're doing the high intensity sessions there, you're going to be burning more carbohydrate than you would do actually fat then. Okay, it's also going to support mitochondria as well. Okay, these are like the little energy producing cells which are real big players for fat loss there as well. It's got big long-term effects on your fat loss as well. So in terms of the biggest bang for buck, which is what we talk about, if you can elevate your metabolism long-term, that's going to have a much, a great effect on your fat loss. So that's where it would trump steady state cardio, is again talking about that metabolic impact which we're going to be having through this. But like with everything, there are cons to high intensity. I'm not going to get every single person I coach to do high intensity interval training, because it's not going to be appropriate for a lot of people that we train. It is for some, but not for others. It's very demanding in terms of energy. Okay, so it's not something you can really go into if you're feeling flat or just lacking energy at all. You've got to be pretty on, ready to go. It's pretty taxing on your central nervous system. Okay, so you don't want to do this type of training if you're doing it properly. You don't want to do this type of training more than maybe twice, maybe 3 times a week, depending on what your other training schedule is like. If someone was training with us in the studio, say 3 days a week, I'd tell them the maximum I'd want them to do, like the high intensity stuff, would be like twice a week typically, because it's taxing on your central nervous system. If you end up doing too much of it, you'll end up kind of stressing your body out too much and can end up having a negative effect. So it's important to get the balance right. Taxing on your skeletal system potentially as well. So if someone's running, for instance, and things that are high impact, potentially going to have a big impact on the skeleton there. That can move us on to the next part there, which is a higher risk of injury. So if someone's doing maximal sprints, that's going to be putting more of a stress under the body than if someone's running at 50-65% of their maximum heart rate. It's going to be much more risk of injury. And on that note, it's then not suitable for beginners, also not suitable for people who are injured or who are prone to injuries. So if someone's always got like an adductus tear, or they've got like a knee problems or something which recur, then we're not going to get them doing a super high intensity interval training. It's not going to be the most appropriate thing for them. Yeah, it might be good in terms of helping them to get the metabolism elevated, but that's not going to be any use to them whatsoever if they're led up on a couch with an ice pack on their knee. Okay, so that's worth considering that as well. Your injury history and how prone you are to injury. So I said I always talked about the little fat oxidation during exercise. You're not really going to burn fat during the actual session. So that that increased caloric burn comes after the session. All right, I said it's not suitable for beginners. You want to avoid food, around your workout, just due to gastric emptying as well, by the way. And as I said, you can only really do this a couple of times a week. As I said, you don't want to do this, more than maybe twice a week, 3 times tops, depending on you as an individual and the rest of your program. I had a lady come in for a consultation once, not so long ago now, actually, I asked her what her current training program was and what she was doing, and I was like, wow, okay, you need to rest. She was basically doing, what was she doing? I think she was doing 7 days a week, and she was doing like 2 personal training sessions with someone in Dorchester. She was doing, I think, 2 HIIT classes a week. She was going spinning once a week. I think she went to yoga, which I said that was right. She was going to like a boot camp session. She was basically doing about 7 high intensity sessions a week. Okay, and was wondering why she wasn't getting results. And when I told her that if she was going to come work with me, I was going to make her have, I would require her to have 2 days a week resting, as in not training. She actually started shaking. So needless to say, she didn't actually end up working with me because she didn't want to take the rest. So I can guarantee that right now, her nervous system is stressed right out, and she's still not getting the results that she was after, because that's going to happen because she's just overstressing the body with too much of the good stuff. All right. So that's a con of that stuff. So look, we'll have a little look at just a couple of fact or fiction. I mean, one of the things that people say is that low intensity steady state cardio causes muscle wastage. Is that fact or fiction? Yes, fact. Yeah, it'll happen. If someone's doing too much cardiovascular training steady state, then they're gonna end up tapping into the muscle stores. And it's on the flip side, high intensity interval training is actually something which is muscle sparing. I mean, you only have to look at the difference between like a marathon runner there on the left and a sprinter on the right. If you have a look at the difference in physique there, I mean, obviously they're both fit for purpose, but you can see the guy on the left there is not stacked. Right, and obviously the guy on the right there is a little bit more so. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is whether more is better. I've kind of just touched on that just now, talking about the girl who came in who's doing too much high intensity stuff. That goes for anything. It goes for weights training. It goes for steady state cardio training. It goes for high intensity interval training. It goes for any other type of training. More is not better. Okay. Now, studies will show that it's not so much the duration of up to a point. It's not so much the duration of the cardio exercise which has the effect, so much as it is the intensity, which is the important thing. Okay, so for actual fitness and fat loss results, typically it's the intensity which is more important than the duration. More is not better. Obviously, if you're doing nothing, then more is going to be better, likely. But if someone's doing like 4 runs a week and then they stop getting results and they say, okay, should I bump it up to 6 runs a week? The answer's probably going to be no. What we just want to do is actually get those 4 runs a week better, or maybe look at your schedule and actually dial it down a bit and actually do a bit less potentially. So more is not always better, and certainly not in the case of high intensity interval training. So if someone's doing like 3 sessions a week of it, there's no way we'll be telling them to do any more than that. Absolutely. So in terms of like conclusions on this, if you were to do the high intensity stuff 5 or 6 days a week, that's going to have a negative effect on your weight training. Okay, so it'll actually end up having a negative effect on your other training other than cardio, and actually interfere with muscle growth as well, believe it or not. Although high intensity training is muscle sparing, if you're doing too much of it, as we said, you're going to get some central nervous system fatigue there, which isn't what you want. The steady state cardio, as we said, is easily adaptive, and you're going to end up wanting to do or needing to do more and more to have the same effect as you did to start off with, which is why, if someone starts off running 4 miles a day, 3-4 days a week, they think, right, yeah, I'm getting good results, and I've lost 10 pounds this month, but now suddenly I'm not losing any weight because they're doing the same thing. Their body's adapted to it. Okay, so we need to change it up. We need to change the duration, the frequency, the intensity, all those things we can actually alter. Okay, so it's easily adaptive to the steady state stuff. In terms of barriers to the high intensity stuff, we've already spoke about injury, cardiac problems. If someone's got heart problems, I don't want them doing high intensity stuff. If they've got, their blood pressure is already through the roof, we're not going to get them doing high intensity training. And the psychological factors as well. To do a high intensity interval training session correctly and actually get the bang for buck that you're after, actually train the energy system that you're after, and to get results you're after, it is demanded on psychologically. It's hard to push through and actually get your body to work at 95%. A lot of people will think they're working at that, but they're not. Okay, it's really, it's tough, and it's tough to actually go through that pain or that discomfort to actually get the result that you want by doing that type of training. So there's a psychological thing as well. In terms of steady state stuff, it can be boring, as I said. The time can be a pain in the arse if you find you end up having to do more and more and more and more. And we spoke about there's minimal bang for buck with it. Okay, the high intensity stuff is muscle sparing. Okay, so if you're doing a weight training program, and if someone wants to add muscle, we don't typically want them doing steady state cardio. We'd much rather get them doing a couple of high intensity sessions a week, along with the correct nutrition, which is actually going to help them to spare muscle tissue, as opposed to actually burn into it, which you potentially would do more so with the steady state cardio. Steady state stuff then can be better for active recovery. Okay, so as we spoke about that already, so that's the winner there. Steady. So if we're talking like fat burning, steady state cardio is favourable in terms of the actual energy you'd expend during the session. Okay, but as I said, the fat burn is going to stop at the end of that session pretty much, with the elevated fat burning. The high intensity stuff, you're not going to burn as much fat during the session, no way, but you're then going to burn more calories for the next 24 hours or so, potentially. Well, you will, if you've actually done the session right. So a lot of it will actually come down to preference, and what's actually going to work for you best as an individual. Hopefully, what we've had a look at already will kind of make you think, right, okay, so I've got a knee problem, so I don't want to be doing the high intensity stuff. Or you might be thinking, right, I've got I'm in okay shape. I've got I can probably spare 45 minutes a couple of times a week. If I want maximum bang for buck, I can get some high intensity stuff done. All right. In terms of talking about frequency, duration, stuff like that. As I said, we spoke about frequency of the HIIT sessions. I definitely only start off with 2 sessions a week, doing that as a maximum. Okay. On the steady state cardio, you can do that sort of 3-4 times a week, or most people could probably do 3 or 4 times a week potentially. But again, we don't want to go and kind of overdo it on that front. Definitely not. Certainly if you're doing impact stuff, which you've not really done before. So if someone's going to start running, for instance, I wouldn't tell them to get out and run for 45 minutes 4 times a week straight away. We'd want to gradually build it up. Okay, so gradually build up to it, and just gradually make those improvements as we go through. Okay, so preference will actually come down to it, and that's a pretty important thing as well. So in terms of where to go from now, I think what I'll do, I'll just answer a couple of questions which you actually had come in, which will help you out a little bit. Some of them we've kind of gone through during this coaching anyway, but we'll just get onto those, and then if you've got any more, then you can comment in the webinar, or you can comment in the coaching group in the webinar upload, and we can get back to you as soon as possible on those as well. If you want me to have a look at your cardio program, then you can obviously upload that into the group. We can check that out for you as well. So a question I got through was, which type of cardio is better for fat loss? So as I said, you want to kind of look at all the things we said, talked about there, in terms of the pros and cons of each, and find out where you're at right now, or at least have an idea of where you're at right now. And that's going to give you a starting point anyway. If where you're at right now, high intensity training, isn't going to be appropriate for you, then there's only one answer, which is for you, for fat loss, it's got to be the steady state stuff, or the steadier state stuff. Okay, so that's That's what we kind of think with that. As I say, if you want maximum bang for buck, and you've not got injuries, you're in reasonable shape, then the high intensity stuff can work that bit better for you. It's particularly if you push for time. Next one we've got, what's the best type of training to do for home training? Well, if you've got like a treadmill at home or cross trainer, then you can do whatever. But otherwise, I'd say obviously the high intensity stuff. If you're doing a high intensity session, sometimes like what we do in our finishers, sometimes for instance, you could do that and make that into more of a full workout. So using something like a rope, or using like high knee sprints where you could do like Tabatas, so you do like 20 seconds work, 10 seconds rest, and you could smash through that, for instance, or step in, or exercising like burpees and squat jumps and things like the runners and mountain climbers, all things like that. So you can do cardiovascular exercise at home. So in terms of that, I think you get much better results and much more enjoyment from doing like a set workout like that, like an interval based thing, than you would from running up and down your stairs for half an hour, right? Or doing like fast feet whilst watching Dede's latest cookery show for half an hour. So got another question here saying, I hate running, what's the best type of cardio to do? There's nothing to say that you have to do running if we're talking about cardio training. Again, it depends on the individual, depends on injury status, for instance, and it can obviously depend on someone's likes and dislikes and preferences. So if you hate running, find something you do like, or find something you don't mind doing. Okay, something. I'm a massive fan of using a bike for interval sessions. I really like doing that. I'll set my turbo trainer up in the studio, and I'll get that smashed out while Netflix is on, and I'll just train hard on the bike. Cross trainer's pretty good. A lot of people like going on a cross trainer. I'm a big fan of, for the high intensity stuff, I like doing a rower as well. So rower's pretty good if you're doing the HIIT sessions in particular. So again, it comes down to preference really. And then we've got a question, what's the best for getting lean? Now, that'll kind of be the same as the first one we got on the best one for fat loss, really. I'd say, if you're already in pretty good nick, then I'd shoot for the high intensity stuff a couple of times a week. Now, just because you're doing one, guys, it doesn't mean you can't do the other. So if someone's doing like, 2 high intensity sessions a week, and depending on the rest of their training program they're doing, they could happily get out there and do another 1 or 2 cardio sessions, just steady state, for instance, and without being counterproductive potentially. Again, it all depends on the individual. Depends on the individual, their training program, their training history, and their direction they're going in terms of training, in terms of where they want to be. So guys, hopefully that has been helpful for you. If you've got questions, then just comment on the post which this video is uploaded for. So you can just put your questions there. As I said earlier on, if you want us to have a look at your cardio program, then just comment in the box as well, and we can check that out for you and kind of work with you on that and help you to get something which is going to get you the results what you want, and just help you get more from your training and maximum bang for buck, while making sure it's going to be appropriate and suitable for you. So look, guys, hopefully that's helped you out, and we'll catch up soon. Cheers, bye bye.